Forager is a 10 to 20 hour game with progress similar to incremental/clicker games, but with actual gameplay to go along with it. I think that description will be enough for 90% of you watching to make a decision on whether this game is for you. I'm sure many of you love the enthralling quality that many incremental games have, and I'm just as sure that many of you hate them. For those of you unfamiliar with the genre, I suggest that you cautiously look up Cookie Clicker or Clicker Heroes. I've mentioned them on the channel before, and I hope to have a full video devoted to them one day, but for now let's talk about Forager. It's available for $20 US, and I think that's at least 5 USD too much, maybe even 10. I didn't like it, yet I still found myself glued to the progression loop. Forager is a mix of Zelda, Don't Starve, Factorio, Stardew Valley, and those incremental games. You will start out hitting individual trees and rocks and dutifully maintaining a small amount of crafting stations. And by the end, well, I guess we're hitting spoilers this early, so consider yourself warned. I can't really show much here without getting into the mid and late game because the game is so short. The goal of Forager is to not have to play it anymore, and I don't mean by reaching the end and seeing the credits or finishing a quest. I mean almost everything will be automated. Mining rods will burst all the resource nodes open for you, and a fleet of droids will harvest everything and even kill enemies. The active gameplay at the end of Forager is making sure your crafting stations are pumping out products and running around hitting the ground with your shovel for huge piles of resources that the droids collect for you. I'm not exaggerating here, for the last 2 hours I spent with the game, I ran around maniacally hitting the floor with my shovel more than I was doing anything else. On your way to that inevitable ending, you will acquire experience points and gold. Leveling up grants a skill point that you can spend in a perk tree that unlocks more options adjacent to whatever choice you make. This is both a good thing and a bad thing since you get a bit of excitement to see what new abilities are going to be available for your next level, but you also have to unlock perks blindly and may not find some massive game-changing ones until much later into the game. Leveling is also where the incremental side of Forager kicks in hard since experience requirements skyrocket after a while and traditionally gathered XP becomes useless. Spirit orbs are another path for progress, and they can be used to either increase your maximum health, energy, or attack damage, which isn't just for combat, it also makes you bust open trees and rocks faster. The fourth option is an instant level up, and the reason I am explaining this now is because this becomes the only reasonable way to level up after the mid-game when I played. Spirit orbs are initially a rare treasure that becomes increasingly common as the game goes on until you can craft them with a perk on the edge of the skill tree at the end. The way you use gold also scales in a similar way, but never gets as outrageously high as experience demands. The primary use for gold is to buy islands, which is the most interesting thing that Forager does. You only have one tiny bit of land at the beginning, and you have to mint the coins yourself to purchase the rights for new land to pop into existence. There are 5 biomes in the world that I think are always in the same place, but I know for sure that some of the islands within those biomes are placed randomly. In my first playthrough, I had this treehouse island to the right of my starting zone and the museum to the left. When I played the game a second time to test the islands, the museum was on my right instead. As long as you can afford it, you can unlock nearby islands in any order that you wish, which gives you access to more islands next to them, exactly like the perk tree, funnily enough. Almost every island in the game has something unique to do on it, so a building that either has something special inside, like a puzzle room, a dungeon, or a place to change your appearance, or an NPC with a quest or a puzzle on the island itself. These range from simple to trial and error to some observation stuff to a little misleading, like these numbers on the ground which are used on a completely different island in another biome that you may not have discovered yet. Generally, however, this is one of the better parts of the game. The world expands, so do your options, and whether the event is a fun little puzzle or a boring fetch quest, there's the possibility of getting a reward. These are usually those spirit orbs we saw earlier, but sometimes they can be artifacts with unique properties. The first one I found was boring, just a flat bonus to experience gain, but others can give you a chance to regain health when you kill an enemy or make all skeletons friendly to you. There's nothing major, but they're still more interesting than flat number bonuses. Gear upgrades are done in a similar way. Some just increase your movement or attack speed, but others set resource nodes on fire so they can break open sooner, or your shovel will now automatically irrigate any holes you dig for planting seeds. Almost everything in the game can be upgraded like this. Your array of tools, the power of each individual one, your boots, gloves, and amulet, and you get the idea. Forager fully commits, maybe it even overcommits, to the incremental style progression cycle. It just doesn't do much on top of that style, and that's where I start to question whether it succeeds. On the one hand, the game is bogged down by numbers and the constant need to interact with its food-fueled gathering engine. By the mid-game, it will take much longer to buy a new island or unlock your next ability. You will be running around your islands gathering as much as you can, which depletes your energy. You will be constantly eating because any energy upgrades you may have chosen don't quite keep up with how much faster you are at moving and swinging your tools. Yeah, just moving around uses energy in this game. Not that moving is always easy, since plants, rocks, bushes, and tombstones will always be respawning and getting in your way. Some of the graveyard biome islands start to look like something out of Bloodborne, all the while your character keeps crying for food like a newborn. These issues are solved with some of the later unlocks. A few hours after this, I had enough upgrades that I didn't need to eat anymore, ever. Just like in real life, if you work yourself through starvation, your character self-cannibalizes a heart's worth of health for about half of your total energy bar. This is something I took advantage of in the early game, since most food also restores hearts, so I could double dip. With perks and artifacts that allowed me to regain health when killing an enemy, I was able to ignore food entirely. The problem with islands becoming cluttered was also solved by mining rods, which automatically kept them clear and my hoard of resources ever expanding. Inventory limitations were another problem that was half solved with upgrades. Although I still question why a game like this has inventory limits at all, you can craft vaults for extra space, which strangely auto-stacks items if your personal inventory is full, and you can just use these items in the vaults when it comes to crafting, so they really are like inventory upgrades and expansions, but separate. You also can't pull items from the vaults when it comes to putting the museum bundles together, so you have to go and collect them manually, but you don't have to for crafting, which seems like maybe an oversight to me. But the increasing numbers for gold and experience were never solved. Instead, I did what I think almost anyone would do. I left the game running while I went to bed one night, and when I woke up I had enough gold to buy the rest of the islands I was missing. You're not so gently nudged into this by the discovery of banks. These are buildings that automatically generate 1 gold piece every few seconds. There's an upgrade that makes it so banks placed next to other banks make each other produce gold faster. This effect stacks. Does that sound familiar? Hopefully for the sake of your productivity it doesn't. Other buildings can be optimized in similar ways, and it may be surprising that a game that starts out like this on a lone island ends up having oil rigs and power plants and droids made out of fiberglass. You get there surprisingly quickly, which is why I had to spoiler warning the video so soon, but it's also how I can best explain why I think Forager is disappointing. The game doesn't commit to either of the two sides of its gameplay. It's not really an adventure/crafting game. It doesn't have enough options or complexity in either of those halves to feel worth it as that type of experience. It has some dungeons that sort of explore that side, but they're very short and simple, like shrines from Breath of the Wild. That's not necessarily a bad comparison, but there's only 4 of them in the game. But the incremental part doesn't go anywhere either. Of course, it will depend on what order of perks that you stumble through as you level up your first time, but I feel comfortable saying that as soon as you make your first droid, the game is effectively over. Most of the islands will be bought, so all you'll be leveling up for will be efficiency modifiers for the sake of efficiency itself. Look at it another way. At the beginning of Forager, you are acquiring resources and upgrades for a purpose. You want to see new tools, new buildings, and new islands. But when those run out, and they will fairly quickly, you are left making yourself better at gathering resources in order to gather more resources to make yourself better at gathering resources. Incremental games often use a prestige system which resets your progress for a modifier in a sort of new game plus mode so that you can push your numbers even higher with each reset. There are often new features and new currencies and decisions to make with these resets. I would never say an incremental clicker game has compelling gameplay, but they do manage to be enthralling, perhaps in a destructive, unethical way, but that's a story for another time. Forager doesn't have that with its incremental side. It only dabbles in it, but it only dabbles in everything else too, and maybe that's the point, a lighthearted 10 to 20 hour romp that consumes you one weekend and then spits you out, leaving you questioning yourself about the ways you spend your free time. If there's a video game equivalent of a meal that's a bit tasty but also leaves you a little sick afterward, Forager is it. It has some quality of life issues too. I think I made a bad decision to play with a gamepad, but the main menu presented it as an equal option. Targeting things to hit never felt quite right, and combat is more about mashing than anything else since you have a long invulnerability period after taking damage. Inventory management lacks a sort function, and I couldn't find a way to move things within my inventory either with a gamepad. Forager was originally a game jam creation. I think the essence of that version carried over to this release, and while the art style isn't something I love, I can appreciate that it stuck and became part of the game's soul. It's definitely more than a jam game now, but there's still an early access feel that I can't shake off. This might be a problem with me though, since early access has become so common now that I might be seeing it in places that it isn't, but the long update roadmap, the game fizzling to an end, and using achievements as gameplay goals makes it so I can't help but think this way. But maybe that's too cynical. Post-launch support should be celebrated, not looked at with suspicion. Forager is not a bad game. I think I would give it about a 5 out of 10. It was an okay game for me and still managed to get me hooked even though I knew full well the type of rabbit hole I was falling down. If you are mildly interested in it after watching this, I'd recommend waiting for a few of the updates. And if you think you could still love this game, then don't let my words stop you even for a little bit. I hope you have a good time. Thank you everyone, I'll see you in the next video.